There is a car in this first presentation, first slide. You just have to look for it some more in detail. And I made my presentation somewhat personal, which might be interesting. And before we get into the mechanics, it's always interesting to know where you came from. And in terms of where you really came from, there's some DNA analysis, and this is an exact replica both on my mother's side and my dad's side, where they actually came from. And yes, we all came from Africa, and based on DNA. And on my mother's side, this is where she came and started from. And what you're looking at here is a genetic heat map of probability. All the angles are dots of genetic matches from myself to on my mother's side. And it started 70,000 years ago, and I guess they did a lot of walking and maybe some boating. They didn't have cars then and so on. My dad's side is this map here. And my mom and dad met, one was Irish, one was from the Ukraine, and they met in Toronto. And so there's an interesting feature there of we're all pretty related to everybody. And this is a familiar sight, and I'm going to show you what happens above our heads about a year ago in August every day. And we're fortunate to have boats, planes, and cars and rapid transit here to help guide us. And we work very closely with the airports. This is what happens. These are arrivals for 1 day, 24-hour period above our heads at YVR. Eric is in one of those red lines, and Caitlin would be in another one, I imagine. It's a bit of public art in its own right. These are the departures in that same 24-hour period. Planes take off trying to fly into the wind. And then when you put them together, it looks like this. And so one of the things that we do is try and figure out, you can understand why the airport doesn't want residential too close to the airport. And we work with them to, in places off the runways, minimize residential, and but we still allow it. And the yellow are overflights. These don't take off from the airport. These are helicopters and seaplanes that take off. This is in one 24-hour period. And you're looking at about 1,000 flights here. And then on that day, they would have moved 85,000 people coming and going. And because when they fix up engines, this is the first engine run-up facility in Canada. So when you fix an engine up, you have to run the engine. And this is a box where the air goes, the noise goes up. So the people in Terra Nova can get a better quality of life. And we have some birds there, and they have falconeers. They also have dogs and boom guns to keep the birds away so that we don't have a crash. And we are on the Pacific Flyway, so we know we have the habitat, but there's one place here where we have to keep the birds away so that we can do this. This is an early rendition of the tram, and I'll make a plug for that presentation next door. It's got a better, one of the finest histories I've seen here, totally. And Tram Barn in Steveston is a work of art, and there's still talk about getting this thing, getting it on the road and making it work. Cars. First one, depending on how you define it, was in China by a Jesuit. And you get into the first modern automobile is looking something like that at the bottom in about 1886. But he entered it as a motorcycle. And first accident, about 1871. And in Canada, a priest in PEI, he had an accident. And he ran it off the road. First seat belts, things you take for granted, were invented 85. First traffic lights were installed. First rear view mirror. You can read the rest, but the one is the first set of white lines, which really saves lives, was in Michigan in 1911. and he saw a fellow saw milk falling off a milk wagon making a white line, and he figured that was out, and that was one of the places it started. Henry Ford, $825 would buy you that, and I had relatives in Manitoba move from Manitoba back to Detroit for that, the $5 an hour price tag. And they actually made that in the car in Walkerville, Ontario as well. Some of the smaller cars that I know I couldn't get into, and some of the faster cars that I know I couldn't afford are there. And they can get you to work pretty quickly if you want to move fairly quickly to that. You see once in a while the Formula racing cars. So for about $8 million, you can buy one of these things, where the brakes get about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and each one of the different parts in there. The engine is about $500,000 alone. The tires have a life of 200 clicks. You can go down to the gym school of racing and actually learn how to do this, but you'll be paying that much an hour to learn how to be consistent, is the name of the game. Get to City Hall within 10 seconds every day of the same time. And we can always ask where else we can go. Thank you.